Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's really great to have you with us today. I'm your host and I'm ready to get into this one.
And I am thrilled to be here to help unpack it all. We have got some really interesting material today.
We really do. So looking at the calendar right now,
Yeah.
you really can't miss it, can you? It's that time of year where the world just suddenly explodes in a very specific and honestly very aggressive color palette.
Oh, yeah, it really does.
We are talking red, we are talking pink, and we're talking about that distinct anatomical, well, I guess vaguely anatomical shape that is certainly plastered on literally everything, from candy wrappers to pharmacy windows to the grocery store aisles.
It is entirely unavoidable. The hearts, the roses, the sudden urgency to make dinner reservations like 3 months in advance. It is a complete cultural juggernaut.
It really is omnipresent.
Yeah.
And everyone knows the drill, right? You buy the chocolate, you write the card,
Yeah.
you do not mess up the dinner reservation
Yeah.
or you're in serious trouble.
Exactly.
But today we are doing something a little bit different for you. We aren't doing a gift guide. We're actually hitting the pause button on all that panic buying to figure out what this day actually is.
Yes.
We've got a stack of research here for our deep dive today, headlined by a really fascinating piece called Heart of the Matter, The Origins and Evolution of Love. And we are going to completely tear it apart.
And honestly, this material is so refreshing because it isn't telling you which flowers to buy or how much to spend. It frames the entire investigation around one single central mission, which is decoding the actual DNA of Valentine's Day.
Right.
Because when you strip away the foil-wrapped chocolate and the greeting cards, what is actually left?
And that is the big question. Is it just a commercial obligation invented by greeting card companies to boost their Q1 revenue? Or is there something, I don't know, something deeper going on?
Well, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
There's absolutely something deeper.
Okay.
But the long answer is a lot more complicated and, frankly, a lot bloodier than you might expect.
Bloodier. Okay, well, I have to admit, I'm usually just in it for the half-price candy on February 15th.
Oh, of course. The best part.
That is my personal holiday right there. But when I started reading through the history in this source material, I realized I had zero clue where any of this actually came from. I mean, I thought maybe there was a guy named Valentine who just really liked writing poetry.
And that is the common assumption. We all just accept the ritual without knowing the origin. But this deep dive isn't a history of shopping. The source material treats this as an investigation into human connection. It defines the day explicitly as a dedicated celebration of love, affection, and appreciation that goes way, way beyond just the romantic stuff.
And that is exactly what we are going to unpack for you today. Because let me tell you, the history here is wild. We're going to get into some secret forbidden weddings in ancient Rome. We're going to talk about a very strange connection to birds in the Middle Ages.
Which is actually one of the pivotal moments in literary history, believe it or not.
I know. We will definitely get to the birds. And we are going to talk about why the modern version of this holiday, the one we all kind of love to hate, might actually be the most important version yet, so buckle up. Let's get right into the history.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's dial the clock back, way back. We are leaving the card aisle at the grocery store, and we are landing right in the middle of ancient Rome.
Right. If you want to understand the true heartbeat of this holiday, you have to look at the Roman Empire, specifically the 3rd century.
Okay.
And it wasn't exactly a time of chocolates and teddy bears. It was a time of constant warfare and political instability. And right in the middle of all this chaos, we have the legend of Saint Valentine.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me. I always pictured St. Valentine as this soft sort of cherubic figure floating around on a cloud playing a harp. But the accounts in our source material paint a picture of someone much grittier. This whole thing plays out more like a political thriller than a rom-com.
Exactly. You really have to understand the antagonist here. We are talking about Emperor Claudius II. He was actually known as Claudius the Cruel, which honestly tells you everything you need to know about his management style.
Yeah, that is not a subtle nickname.
Not at all. So Claudius was having a lot of trouble recruiting soldiers for his endless campaigns, and his working theory was that married men made bad soldiers.
Because they didn't want to leave their families.
Precisely. Because they were reluctant to leave their wives and their children to go die in battle.
So logically, he just cancels marriage.
Basically, yes. He essentially banned marriage for young men. He thought single men with no attachments would fight harder and be more ruthless for Rome.
That is just intense. So you have a literal government ban on love, effectively. Enter Valentine.
Enter Valentine.
Yeah.
He was a priest who looked at this imperial decree and just said, absolutely not. The legends say he began performing marriages for young lovers in complete secret.
Wow.
Picture it right. Candlelight hidden underground rooms whispering the vows so the Roman guards wouldn't hear them outside.
See, that changes the entire vibe of the holiday for me. It's not about just being sweet or romantic. It's about civil disobedience. It's literal rebellion.
It is defying the state for the sake of human connection. It's incredibly powerful.
So Valentine is down there marrying these soldiers, knowing full well that if he gets caught, he is literally going to lose his head.
And eventually he did. He was martyred for it. Now, the history is a bit murky, as ancient history often is, but the narrative that survived is that he was discovered, imprisoned, and executed.
Right.
But before he died, there is one specific detail that directly links back to our modern traditions today. Legend has it, he befriended his jailer's daughter while he was locked up.
Some accounts say he healed her from blindness, right?
Yes, exactly. And on the day of his execution, he left her a farewell note, and he signed it, "From your Valentine."
Okay, that is just iconic. The original Valentine was a literal goodbye note from a man about to be executed for defying the emperor.
It's very heavy stuff. But the source material points out how this cemented the day's link to romance and devotion very early on. It wasn't arbitrary. It was built entirely on this narrative of risking absolutely everything for love.
So we start with this rebellious Roman saint. Blood and sand and secret weddings. But then the history takes a pretty sharp turn. We jump forward 1,000 years or so to the Middle Ages, specifically England and France.
Yes.
And this is where things get weirdly agricultural.
Well, I would say ecological.
Yeah.
This is the exact moment where the holiday shifts from a strict commemoration of a religious martyr to a broader celebration of spring. And to understand this, we have to talk about Geoffrey Chaucer.
The writer, the Canterbury Tales guy.
The very same. So before Chaucer, there really wasn't a strong tradition linking St. Valentine's feast day to romantic love. It was just another religious day on the church calendar.
Okay.
But in the 1380s, Chaucer wrote a poem called The Parliament of Fowls.
The Parliament of Fowls. That sounds like a very boring C-SPAN documentary.
It really does, doesn't it? But at the time, it was actually revolutionary. In the poem, he describes a great conference of birds gathering together to choose their mates. And he explicitly links this natural phenomenon to St. Valentine's Day.
So let me get this straight. People just looked out their windows, saw birds chirping and getting cozy, and said, hey, the birds are dating. We should probably do that too.
In a way, yes, but you really have to put yourself in the mindset of a medieval person. Winter back then was absolutely brutal. It was dark, it was freezing cold, and everything around you looked dead.
Right, no central heating.
Exactly. So mid-February is the very first hint that spring is finally coming. So when Chaucer links the mating of birds to this specific date in February, he's tapping into this very deep human desire for renewal and warmth.
It grounds it, doesn't it? It makes the whole thing feel much less artificial. It's like the earth is finally waking up. Life is returning. So let's talk about love.
Exactly. It wasn't just an arbitrary date on a calendar decided by a corporate marketing team. It was seasonal. Humans were literally looking at nature to explain their own internal feelings. And once Chaucer made that literary link, the aristocracy completely ate it up.
They loved it.
They did. They started writing these elaborate poems to each other, and they started calling those poems Valentines.
And this brings us nicely to the how of the holiday.
Yeah.
Because we go from poems to, well, to physical stuff. Our source material traces the evolution of the Valentine itself, which is fascinating.
Because for centuries, a Valentine was strictly a handwritten note.
Which, can we just pause and appreciate that for a second? Handwritten, that feels so incredibly intimate compared to what we have now.
It really does. It wasn't a mass-produced sentiment that you just pulled off a rack. It was a personal scribble, a private, dedicated communication between two people inspired by this new season of romance.
Yeah.
But then the 19th century hits, the Industrial Revolution. And this is the part of the story that often gets skipped over, but the research shows it is absolutely crucial to why we celebrate the way we do.
This is where we get the penny post, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the 1840s, in the UK, postage suddenly becomes incredibly cheap. It costs just a penny. Suddenly, you do not have to be wealthy to send a letter to someone.
Right, it democratizes the mail.
Exactly. And at the exact same time, printing technology is exploding. So instead of agonizing for hours over a handwritten poem, you could just go down to a shop and buy a pre-made card with lace and fancy flowery verses already printed on it.
So we basically outsource the poetry.
We democratized the romance, but yes, we absolutely standardized the expression of it. But here's my absolute favorite part of the Victorian era that the research touches on, the vinegar Valentine.
Oh, I read about these. These were the anti-Valentines, right?
Yes, they were. We tend to think of the Victorians as very proper and repressed and polite, but they were actually sending millions of these incredibly mean cards.
Billions.
Millions. They were straight up insults. If you didn't like a particular suitor, or if you just thought someone in your town was ugly or annoying, you could anonymously send them a vinegar Valentine on February 14th.
That is just savage. Can you even imagine? You run out to the mailbox expecting a beautiful love sonnet, and instead you get a caricature drawing of yourself looking like a goblin.
It was incredibly common, but what the source material points out is that this shows that even back then, the holiday wasn't just about soft, fuzzy, romantic love.
Right.
It was a day to settle scores. It was a day to define relationships, whether those were positive or negative. It was a day of very high social stakes.
It really was. So we went from a secret illegal wedding for a Roman soldier
Mhm.
to a season where we watch birds to a massive industrial machine churning out lace cards and literal hate mail.
It is a very long journey, but what really stands out to me in the research is that at every single stage, the core theme is always connection.
Yeah, connection.
Whether it is defying the law, mimicking nature, or using the postal service, it is always about humans trying to find a way to signal to each other, I am here and I have strong feelings about you.
And that brings us perfectly into the modern era, because frankly, the vinegar Valentine energy seems to have mostly dissipated today, but the anxiety around the holiday definitely remains.
Oh, absolutely.
The source material makes a really strong point here, that the definition of who matters on this day is rapidly changing.
Yes, this is a crucial pivot in the text. For a long time, especially during that massive 20th century commercial boom, Valentine's Day was strictly for couples. It was romantic love or absolutely nothing.
Right.
If you didn't have a date, you were basically invisible on February 14th.
Which, let's be honest, is exactly why so many people absolutely dread it. It turns the entire day into a have versus have-not situation. If you're single, it's just a random Tuesday that actively points and laughs at you.
But the research highlights a major paradigm shift that is happening right now. It explicitly states that today the celebration has significantly broadened. It is no longer strictly reserved for romantic couples.
And I really love this part of the deep dive. We're seeing entirely new categories emerge. Like we have Galentine's Day now, which I know started as a joke on the TV show Parks and Rec, but it's a very real thing now.
Valentine's Day has become a massive cultural force. It acknowledges that platonic love, the deep love between friends, is just as sturdy and just as worthy of celebration as romantic love. Maybe even more so sometimes.
Yeah, the text mentions friends and mentions family. It even mentions something that I think is really powerful, which is self-love.
That is a very significant modern addition. In recent years, we've seen this huge trend where people use the day specifically for self-care.
Right.
Buying themselves the flowers or taking themselves out for a nice dinner. It validates the idea that being kind to yourself is a valid form of love that deserves a spot on the calendar.
And it doesn't even stop there. The research also lists expressing gratitude for mentors and teachers.
Which I found so fascinating. We don't usually group mentors in with the concept of Valentine's.
No, not at all.
But if we go back to that original core definition we talked about earlier, love, affection, appreciation, it makes perfect sense. These are people who profoundly shape our lives. Why shouldn't we use the day to thank them?
So what does this all actually mean for you, the listener? It means the pressure is finally off. You do not need a soulmate to participate in this day. You just need someone, literally anyone, that you appreciate.
Exactly. It reframes the entire holiday from Romance Day to Appreciation Day, and that shift makes it universally accessible to everyone.
I think that is a much healthier way to look at it, but I do want to play devil's advocate for just a second here.
Okay, go for it.
Because even if we broaden the definition, a skeptic might still look at this and say, okay, that's all very nice, but why do I need a specific Tuesday in February to do this? Shouldn't I be appreciating my friends and my mentors all year round?
Yes. The classic counter-argument, every day should be Valentine's Day.
Exactly. It feels a little performative to wait for the calendar to tell you to be nice to your friends.
In theory, yes. In a perfect world, we should all be overflowing with gratitude 365 days a year. But the research addresses this directly by bringing up the reality of the busy world context.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because the reality is we aren't overflowing with gratitude usually. We're usually overflowing with emails and chores.
Precisely. We are constantly distracted. We are tired. We are stressed. The argument presented here is that the holiday acts as a forcing function.
A forcing function. I like that.
It's a mechanism that forces a collective pause.
That word pause really stuck out to me in the text, too, because we really do get locked into our routines. You might deeply love your friends, your spouse, your parents, but how often do you actually stop what you're doing, look them in the eye, and clearly articulate it?
And that is the true utility of the day. Think of it like a calendar notification for your heart.
Oh, that's good.
Without that specific prompt, those feelings very often just go unsaid. We assume the people around us know that we love them. But assumptions just aren't the same thing as expressions.
It's so true. How many times have you thought something really nice about someone, and then you just never said it out loud because you got distracted by a notification on your phone or you had to run to a meeting?
Exactly. It happens all the time. And notice what the material prioritizes when it talks about how to celebrate in this modern era. It mentions the flowers and chocolates, sure, those are fine, but it heavily emphasizes thoughtful messages and simple acts of kindness.
Right. It explicitly says that meaningful connection can be this huge, grand gesture, but it can also just be a very sincere text message.
Thank you for being in my life. That is the exact phrase the research highlights. It's so incredibly simple, but we so rarely say it.
That is powerful. It really cuts through all the commercial noise.
And that is the core philosophy we should all take away from this text. It says explicitly relationships matter. That is the bottom line. The day is just a tool, a somewhat pink and frilly tool, to ensure we don't forget that fundamental fact in the noise of everyday life.
So let's recap this whole journey, because it has been quite a trip. We started out with a rebel priest in Rome breaking the law to marry soldiers in secret dungeons.
Defying an emperor.
Then we moved to medieval peasants watching birds in February and deciding that if the pigeons can find love, so can they.
All thanks to Chaucer.
Then we industrialized it, we mass-produced it, we even weaponized it with those Victorian insult cards, and finally we landed on a modern, all-encompassing day of universal appreciation.
It is quite an evolution when you lay it all out, from a capital crime in ancient Rome to a hallmark holiday.
When you look at it that way, it really isn't about the candy hearts at all, is it?
No, not at all. The candy and the red roses are just the packaging. They are just the artifacts of the day. The actual content is the brave act of being vulnerable with another person.
I really like that. It actually makes me want to sit down and write a few notes this year. Maybe not a vinegar Valentine. I think I'll save those for my enemies. But something genuinely thoughtful.
A simple text message can be a modern quill if the sentiment behind it is sincere.
So to wrap this up, the research leaves us with some very clear advice. It says, stay kind, stay thoughtful, and don't forget to tell someone you appreciate them.
Simple, actionable, and absolutely vital.
It really is.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening right now, that is your mission. It doesn't matter if it is a romantic partner, a best friend, or even just the barista who knows your order by heart. Use the excuse of the date to say the nice thing.
But before we go, I do want to leave the listeners with a slightly sharper thought to chew on.
Okay.
We talked heavily about how the holiday is a reminder in a busy world.
Right, the forcing function.
Exactly. But it forces us to ask a rather difficult question. If we didn't have a massive commercial holiday demanding that we perform love, would we actually express it?
Ooh, that is a tough one.
Or have we simply outsourced our emotional labor to the calendar? If February 14th was just another regular Tuesday, how many of those unspoken feelings would just remain silent forever?
That is actually kind of haunting.
It is. Is the calendar the only thing keeping us connected to each other? It's definitely worth thinking about.
That is definitely something for you to mull over while you're eating that half-price chocolate. Thank you all for diving deep with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We will see you on the next one.